I'd like to give a huge shout out to Carpenter's Cafe for hosting Hey Sis this evening. A big thank you to our friend Katrina Carpenter, who always shows up to support AOC and our endeavors. And if you haven't had an opportunity to have that smoked chicken salad, you don't know what you're missing. So please stop by and support Katrina Carpenter and Carpenter's Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first Hey Sis podcast of 2025. And so you know we all have to welcome you with a big Hey Sis. So y'all, hey sis.
Hey sis.
I am so excited to meet up with everybody. It's a brand new year, just so exciting, so many things going on, and we have an awesome panel and an awesome discussion. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I just want you to know that Hey Sis requires no type of membership. We are just a group of sisters who love to get together on a regular basis, be surrounded by like-minded people, and most of all, open-minded people, right? Who don't mind being vulnerable and kind of having some of those tough discussions that people don't always want to have. And so that's what I love about this platform, is that it's always curated with a wonderful group of people who don't mind telling it like it is. But with that being said, we also need you to know that the things that we discuss are our own opinions. These are not the opinions of AOC or any of the other organizations that are represented. And so we just want you to know that we are speaking our own minds and our own truth and being as vulnerable and transparent as possible. So without any further ado, I would like to give all of our awesome, amazing panelists a chance to just go around and introduce yourself. It doesn't have to be anything lengthy. Just give us a quick 60-minute snapshot of who you are and what you do. Or not 60 minutes. Don't do that, y'all. I heard somebody say 60 minutes. Yeah, no, don't talk us to death. 60 seconds. 60 seconds. So we start over here.
Okay.
Yes.
So my name is Kiana Rios. I actually am the owner, founder of Plucked and Eat. It's an eyebrow specialty salon. So I help people achieve their eyebrow goals with custom shaping and enhancements. And I also just opened my first storefront, in which I provide other beautypreneurs with a salon suite space to grow and expand their businesses as well.
Hello, I'm Nia Moss. I am the owner of Black Coffee here in Fort Worth. We are all about coffee and community. We've been open for 5 years. I am a native Fort Worthian, so I am definitely, all about whatever can enhance the community. The East Side is really my specialty, and so that's what I'm focused on.
Oh. My name is Erin Barnett. I am a content creator, fashion influencer, but also a community supporter of Black Fort Worth. So I'm a native of New Orleans, Louisiana, but I have Texas roots. My dad is a Fort Worth native. Okay. So I'm very, very connected to Fort Worth. And having moved here since 2010, I'm all about supporting and finding my community. So, yeah.
All right. And hey, sis. Hey, sis, the people in the virtual land. I'm Dr. Amber Reed. I am not a Texas native. I'm from Trenton, New Jersey, then went to Atlanta, Georgia. And I came to Dallas, Texas to work with an organization called the AFIA Center, where I'm a research analyst. I love and trust Black women, and I love and trust Black people. So.
Yes, I love that.
Man, I love that.
And I am Stay Hall. I'm the CEO of iSalt, which stands for Institute for Success and Leadership Training. And it's just my joy just to be able to pour into other people and make those relationships that last and count and just be around like-minded people. That's what I enjoy doing every day. And I am extremely blessed that I have a business that thrives off of just those things. So, they say when you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. And I literally feel like that every day, even though sometimes I'm up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning doing what I do. And I'm sure a lot of y'all can relate. I absolutely love it. So thank you all for making those introductions. Yeah. And let's just get down to what brings us all here today, right? So it is the new year, and everyone's always talking about new year, new you. I'm actually hosting a women's conference on Saturday, where that is the beginning of our title, right? New year, new you. Thank you. Mind, body, and business. So that's what we're talking about, because a lot of times when we think about new year, new you, new Year's resolutions, we focus on things like our financial goals, right? We the focus on things like our, a lot of people, it's about health and wellness and things like that. But we don't often, if ever, not even in the new year, especially as women, things can be so taboo, but we don't think about our sexual health when it comes to the new year, new you, or any goals that we're reaching. Like, does anybody ever think about even creating sexual goals? And so today we're talking about, hey sis, what's in your toolkit? And that toolkit is, what is in your sexual health toolkit? And with it being the new year, if all of you can reach down, we've provided you with a little toolkit to get you started, just in case you don't already have one. And so y'all know that, this is a safe place. This is a platform about being open-minded and talking about things that people don't necessarily like to talk about. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a panel of women from all different walks of life, women of different age groups, women of different sexual preferences, single women, married women, and we just want to talk about those things as far as women and our sexual health and our habits. So that's what we're talking about. So I hope you all enjoy your goodie bags, but it's just not something that we normally think about when it comes to self-care and self-love. And so what do you ladies think about that as far as our sexual health and our sexual well-being being a part of our self-care and self-love regimen? And y'all don't have to wait for me to call on you, just speak out.
I feel like in the Black community specifically, it is still taboo to kind of have those discussions and to talk about it. And it's interesting because it's 2025, and I know a lot of Black women that are open and honest about those things, but it's like a small group of people, and some of them kind of just out there on their own, expressing themselves and being open and having those conversations. But as a group, we're not really talking about it. And some people are still scared to have those conversations. And so it's just interesting that, in a time where the world is more open, we're still kind of silent about those things.
Right. And unfortunately, I feel like that's something that reigns true in our community on a lot of topics.
Yes.
And we've done those shows before where we've talked about, abuse and just different things where, mental health, where for whatever reason, we have never been able to have those conversations open and freely. So anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it is something that is still so taboo, because when you think about New Year's resolution, everybody is saying, oh, I want to be healthier, or I want to focus on my mental health and spiritual. And then when you kind of dig down to it, like, sex is connected to all of those things.
Right.
When you think about when you go to work happier, or you're able to think and focus more clearly, if sex was part of that, that does help you. So why don't we think about that, or why don't we consider that as part of an overall part of our well-being? So it's interesting.
And it's almost like it's such a natural thing, but it causes so much embarrassment to so many people.
Yes.
And it's like we all are here because of sex.
Right.
You're right about that, right?
If there was no sex, none of us would be here.
Right.
And we always, talk about the conversations having within our communities, and a lot of times, with, our parents or, people in our family and friends. But the thing is, too, a lot of us in relationships, people don't even like to talk about it when it comes to a woman. Like, a man doesn't have any problem telling you what they want you to do, how they want you. But we just be like, whatever you like, a lot of times. So what do y'all think about that with your, and I say a man, but, relationship is whatever the relationship is to you. So let's, with their partner, having those conversations sometimes is difficult. So, I mean, how do you have those conversations?
To the first question you asked, or our thoughts about us not having these conversations, I 100% agree. And we did some focus groups on this, and one of the things we asked people was, what's your most memorable conversation around sex? And we didn't qualify if it was bad memorable, funny memorable, good memorable. But across focus groups, most participants was like, I don't have one. So what we found generally is that Black women don't feel like they're having memorable conversations about sex. I was in a Facebook dating group where it recently came up. Somebody dropped a meme about how women of other races are more likely to perform oral sex or give head. And they asked, why is that? And so Black women started speaking on the lack of autonomy and freedom we get to have from the time that we're raised on up to adulthood, and how that impacts what we do feel free to do, what we feel free to admit we do, because sometimes we're doing things, but we just want to keep it to ourselves. But we listen and we don't judge, right?
Right. We don't judge. That has been the theme in my house the past 24 hours.
Yes.
So I feel like the common thing is, I think even the way we approach sexual health in the U.S. is we don't center pleasure. And I went to a conference that was around HIV prevention, but that's what one of the presenters out of the UK spoke about. So it's an issue, I guess, globally. But we kind of did a scavenger hunt there to see, just with the amount of presentations and things that people were talking about, how many of them centered or even talked about sex as an act of pleasure or self-love or self-care. There were maybe about 3 abstracts out of a couple of hundred, right?
Wow.
So I think that's something to pay attention to, is maybe if we started to think about sexual health not just in terms of something to condemn or criticize with morality or something to raise red flags on, but just another way that we experience pleasure, which is a human feeling. It's a thing that we're all divinely entitled to. I wonder how those conversations and our experiences will go differently.
Right. And we have to have conversations centered around the whole of sex, right? So sex isn't just one-dimensional. And so that brings me to the next thing. We want to talk about safe sex. And as women, oftentimes, we kind of leave that up to the man, right? Because you don't want to be the one to bring it up. And you feel like, okay, that's not something I need to be talking about. And if he doesn't bring it up, then sometimes we don't bring it up. And so that's what I think a lot of times results in unwanted pregnancies, teenage pregnancies, just that shame of not wanting to say it. But as time has gone on, things have evolved and women are more empowered. We have things that we can do on our own. And so how many of you have heard of the female condom?
Heard of it.
I've heard of it.
Heard of it.
Okay. Well, we're going to see one today.
Okay.
And so, Shay, can you come up and demonstrate and show us the female condom? Because this is all about empowerment. So if you don't want to talk about it, then you can be about it. You can have your own condom.
Right.
And do what you need to do with yours so you don't have to have the conversation. Thank you,
Let me
Shay.
just stand here. So this is a female condom. And a lot of people was like, we don't know what they are. We don't know what to do with them. So they're just like, I'm going to show you. Open up for you. Get it open. So the tip of it is just like a regular men's condom. But at the bottom of it, it's a ring. You take the ring and you will squeeze it. As if you take a tampon and stick it up. You'll take it and place it inside on top of your cervix, and it'll sit. Once you get it in, you'll have to use your fingers and press it down. But once it sits on the top of your cervix, it won't move. So you're protected. And it's an easier way than having to tell a man, okay, put on a condom. And you can place this inside of you 8 hours prior to having sex, and it will just sit there. It won't cause irritation or anything, but you can place it right there. And it kind of, when it hits the bottom of your cervix, it's in place. So you do have to twist it out when you get ready to take it out. And I'm gonna give each and every one of y'all one of these before y'all leave here. So
Well, thank you, Shay. Thank you. Yes, I mean, that's amazing, right? So how many people would be comfortable with that or discussing that type of protection with their partners?
I'm crazy.
It looks cool, but I feel like just the social stigma around it. I blame America, the availability of it. You don't see it really advertised, like you see condoms everywhere.
Oh, yeah, no, you have the
even just
Trojan
looking
man.
Even just looking at the audience's faces, when she brought it out and was like kind of explaining what it is, everybody looking like, wait a minute, or even just like pleasure-wise, like that's gonna block all the natural stuff that, kind of flows while you're having sex. So it's just like, I feel like it's not as popular amongst people to even, have that option. And then just, how many females will pull up with, I got the condom, you ready? Right. That's not, it's usually, men, or even like if a female does pull up with a condom, it's a male condom. It's never, a female condom.
Right.
So I think it's the social, societal norms and taboos that, we don't really use those things.
I think though So society as a whole, you know, we have this issue of not wanting to look back, but when you think about it, like the whole sexual market is geared towards men in general. So they have all of the controls. So that's why you see all of the condoms. You see everything that, when we talk about pleasure, we make sure that they are, you know, taken care of. And so you don't see things like that where a woman can kind of take control of, you know, the situation or make sure she's good. And so I get that. And then I'm just thinking about, like, even when the rose boom came out.
Oh my God.
Like,
Men were offended by
men
the
were
word.
upset.
Oh my God.
They were more
offended.
concerned with the effect of it than women were. And
Right,
I was
because it's like, who cares?
yeah, women loved it, and so it was just interesting that, like,
Right.
you know, when you think about it, like, they were kind of offended.
You don't
and
need
so
that.
It's like, yeah,
You don't need
yeah. And they're like, oh, you got that? Oh, I can't mess with her. She got rose. You know,
Yeah.
that's what you
Yeah.
hear. And so it's like one of those things of, it's good to know that that's there, and like that needs to just be everywhere.
Right. And when she said 8 hours, so you could just show up. With
Yeah.
Right. You ain't even gotta have a
Plan
whole
my
day.
day. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it could just be a part of your morning routine.
Right.
So, yeah, you just never know.
Interesting.
I mean, and the thing is, there are, you know, because for me, as a seasoned woman of 53, I am just in that, I think that Gen X generation where I've kind of experienced all different parts of the sexual movement, so be it. And so I grew up at a time where it was very taboo and you don't talk about it. And then I was able to experience the millennial generation where it's like we say whatever we want to say and do whatever we want to say, which I really appreciate that. But being people of different generations, different cultures and backgrounds, when you are the one in your either friend group or your family or whatever that has had that open mindset to, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I'm going to do whatever I want to do with whoever I want to do, how I want to do it. How do you open up those conversations with the people who are a little more afraid to have those? Or do you just keep it to yourself?
Humor.
That's what I was
Humor.
thinking.
Okay.
For sure. Being vulnerable, like just, you know, finding a way to be vulnerable and navigating those conversations. Like my friend tell me she wouldn't mess around with somebody. I'm like, when you went to see that man about a horse, did you take a condom? You know, like just, you know, throwing in something to kind of warm up the moment, you know, so that they'll be, you know, more comfortable in having that conversation. And just relate more like on a relational level too. Like, hey, like, use your own personal experience of something that you did that'll kind of like incorporate something for them to say like, oh, well, me too. Or like, you know, I might do that the next time. So I think that helps.
Yeah. I like that.
Making it experimental too, I think. Like when you do have those solid friend groups, usually at whatever age, conversations about like sex life, what's going on, what's not going on, does arise. Sometimes we have toy parties and those different things, right? So even that's a perfect opportunity to introduce something like the female condom as experimental. Like, yeah, the look of it can be daunting, but there are also like some positive
Yeah,
things
she came
about
out
it.
like, like a kite.
Most people, the first thing is like, oh my gosh, that's huge. But it is, but also the material is, what is it, polyurethane, which I think is supposed to be, for people who don't enjoy latex, it's supposed to allow you to feel more sensation. If you have a latex allergy, it's an alternative. They've also said that that little ring that sits on the outside kind of provides an extra amount of clitoral stimulation. So if anything, right, it's worth
Win-win.
worth trying to see, like, are these things true? But, you know, I think being able to introduce things that people wouldn't usually talk about, even in terms of, like, their health, as things to also experiment in terms of pleasure. Like, can we experience pleasure if we're using a female condom? The only way to know is to try it and see, right?
Yeah. And as we're talking about the female condom and different types of prevention, it's also, that's a conversation to have as well. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable. I mean, we are sitting here being sponsored by AOC, right? AIDS Outreach Center. That's a huge thing. And that's a conversation that needs to be had ahead of time, that do you know your status? And a lot of people don't want to ask that question. And it's so bizarre to me that a conversation that can literally be life-changing is a conversation that people will bypass because it feels uncomfortable in the moment. So when you are in that dating phase or whatever, how do you start that conversation? Like, what is it? Just like, hey, you know your status? When's the last time you've been tested? Or is it just, you know, how do you feel about being tested? Have you ever, like, how do you start that conversation? Because it's so important. It can literally change your life.
I think for me, I've been married for like 12 years now, but for me, it was just me saying, like, because I knew my status, so I just was like, you know, I've been tested, this is what it is. And then, you know, that requires a response. And so if the response was not like, you know, if the response is going to be, I don't know, then I would have definitely suggested it. But I also have a son, and I talk to him about sex all the time, and I tell him, like, it's okay to ask those questions. And it's okay to say, hey, like, if this is something that we want to do, we need to get tested first. You know, just, you know, to put things at ease. I'm like, even, like, yeah, it's your first time, and this person it might be their first time, it might not, you don't know. But I try to get him to understand, like, you need to get tested. Like, even if you have not been sexually active, just get the test first so you know what you're going to expect, and then make it, you know, something that's just normal. So I talk to my kids about that kind of stuff. You know, I just feel
I love that.
Yeah, you just gotta talk about it. If I don't talk about it, he's gonna talk about it to his friends, and they don't know anything.
They don't know.
So,
Right,
They don't
at
know.
all. At all.
Yeah.
At all.
And then also with if you're comfortable, I think for me, because when I'm comfortable with you, it's always an open door. Like there's nothing that I'm not afraid to say, nothing I'm not afraid to ask. And if I have reservation, then I start to question, what is it about you? Do I really want to go down that road with you? If I'm scared to even ask you these questions, if I'm scared to even bring up the topic or have that conversation, I'm not going to lay down with you until we have the conversation. So if I'm like, well, maybe there's still more that I need to learn, or maybe there's still more I need to find out. But for sure, it's that if I'm not comfortable asking, then I'm not comfortable going there with you anyway.
Right. And I love that you brought that up, because so much of what I do is about women's empowerment and loving yourself and knowing your worth. And any time you're in a relationship with anybody and there's trepidation in speaking your truth, then that's something you need to question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that you brought that up, because if you are to the point where you are considering giving this person what is one of the most sacred things we have, but you don't even want to ask a question, or you're scared to bring something up, is that the person that you truly want to share yourself with? Because there should be no fear. And that is cause for pause, if there is. So I love the fact that you brought that up. And while we're talking about being tested, are y'all familiar with, what is it, PrEP? Prep. I don't know why I always want to say pre-ep, because there's only one.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. But are y'all familiar with PrEP?
Yes.
Okay, so we're, I don't know if everyone in the audience is, so Dr. Reed, do you mind giving us a rundown on PrEP?
So PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. It comes in various forms now, but the goal of it is it's medication that you can take to prevent yourself from contracting HIV. And so that facial expression right there, right? Because the information about it is really not reaching our communities or Black women. I just looked up some of the CDC's most recent numbers before I came here tonight. And I think they said among new HIV diagnoses in general, Black people make up about 42%. But maybe about half of those individuals have ever heard of or were ever offered PrEP. When we talk specifically about Black women, that number goes up to about 58%. But it looks the same in terms of, again, the amount of people who have ever been talked to about PrEP prior to that time. So, like, it is something that exists. It's been around for a while. There is a oral contraceptive version. So if you think about the birth control pills, similar to something that you would take daily over time via pill format to help get the medicine in your system. And in the event that your system encountered the HIV virus, the medicine would prevent it from replicating. They also have injection formats, one that you can take in shots like twice a year, I think, and the other one is a long-acting injection so that you only take that once. Those are the ones that are currently approved here in the United States. But they've been experimenting with some other versions in sub-Saharan Africa. So there is also a ring version that's been approved in like 22 African countries. Has found to be effective. I think the research shows that, similar to that question about how you have conversations with your partners, many of the women there were concerned that their partners would feel it if they use the ring, so they prefer the oral contraceptive version because they feel like they get more autonomy, more discretion about using that. But they're even experimenting now with whether or not it offers protection from other STDs, seeing if there are ways to integrate birth control in it so that if we have rings for birth control and rings for PrEP, why not just have one that does the same thing? But that's kind of probably a little bit too much information about what PrEP is and where it kind of stands for us.
That's what we need. That's great.
Right,
That's
right.
great.
And I love all of the options. And, you know, like I said, I'm a seasoned woman. But there are, and I'm married. I've been married about 12 years as well, Mia. But there are a lot of women my age who aren't married and are still dating. And we didn't have this type of exposure. We didn't have these type of options. And so I love that for us, because don't think just because you're on the southern side of 50 that you still can't get stuff.
Right.
Like you can. And so that's the thing that I love too, that the options are out there now. And so there's no excuse. Like you might not be able to get pregnant at 50, but you can still get some other stuff that you might not want. And so that's what I love about this platform too, because it helps empower some of us older women who have had a lot of stigma about this stuff. And so we're still out there sometimes as single women doing stupid stuff because we don't want to have the conversation. So I love y'all for opening up those conversations, and, you know, because we need it. And so I have some panelist specific questions. And so I'm going to start with Kiana. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. In your experience, what items or habits are a part of your toolkit, and what has been your experience with having the kind of conversation? So it's a two-parter.
Okay. I would say annual gyno exams. I've been going to the same gynecologist since I was 15 years old. So, you know, being open and honest with her, which, you know, she knows my lifestyle and all the things around it. And then regular STI testing outside of that. I think that's very much so needed, just to know your status. And the second part of the question, I'm sorry.
The second part was, what has been your experience with having some of the conversations that we spoke of?
Depends on who I'm talking to. Like, my friends, we open and honest. Family, my mom, you know, like people in the seasoned generation, you know,
Yes.
who raised us, and these millennials and stuff, not as much comfortable. So, yeah, that's been my experience.
And it's funny because I keep telling y'all, I'm an old woman. And my mom is here tonight. This is probably the first time I've ever talked about sex in front of my mom.
Okay.
And I'm 53.
I still have never. So
Yeah.
that's been my experience.
And it's like, and after the conversation, this conversation tonight, it probably won't get talked about. But yeah, and I mean, and my sister is here tonight who is younger than me. And this is probably the most sex talk that has ever been done between, you know, with the two of us in presence, you know. So I just, you know, that's something that we need to kind of shy away from and start talking about it. And, you know, it's too late for me. My mom and my sister, we all married, had kids, whatever, so ain't nothing to talk about no more. But, you know. All right. So, Dr. Amber, as an expert in this field, how does your work impact your dating life and how you navigate this topic?
So I was thinking about that. I was like, when you asked the question about how we have conversations with partners, I was like, oh man, I guess I kind of cheat. Because I just use my work as a way to slide into it. But kind of by way of, right, like I love my work, I'm passionate about it. So it's also a value of mine. So like as I'm getting to know a partner, they're getting to know me. And we establish what's important to me and what I value. Like I value practicing what I preach in my work. So if I'm doing prevention work with other people, I got to practice that too. And I need a partner who also supports and practices that. So I think that's one way. Also, all of the information I get access to, the experimentation piece, like, really kind of seeing like what things are like for myself. I'm 38. My mom is a baby boomer. She was in here. She stepped out for a second. But I kind of grew up also where we weren't really having those conversations. We didn't have those sort of freedoms. This is probably also the most I've talked about sex in front of her as well. And so in terms of learning like what all is available, what all there is to experiment with, that wasn't necessarily something that was encouraged growing up for me. And then if you add being a member of a faith-based community on top of that, it gets real complicated, right? So now in my adulthood, actively challenging some of those stigmas that still kind of like lay around, where like shame might be or taboo might be, or the things that make me feel embarrassed. I like to tap into books that deal with some of these things in a self-care way. Two that are on my list right now is Sensual Faith, which is by Lynn Von Briggs. It's kind of a journey again for people who have grown up with these sort of strict faith-based principles that make it difficult for them to feel free in their sexuality and sensuality. She provides scholarship and literature demystifying some of the things that we've been taught, and then also like some practical exercises that you can do to start your own journey. And then the other one, I want to be careful of language, but it's called Pussy Prayers. I cannot remember the author, but it's just very real talk, again, about being able to feel free in terms of your sensuality, your sexuality, and then as you stated earlier, how that connects to your mental health, your wellness, your spirituality, all of those things, like being able to make those connections. And so those are probably the main things in my toolkit, in addition to making sure I keep up with my GYN.
Right, because the thing is, if sex is a part of your life, which it is for most people, why make it stressful by not knowing your status, not knowing what your sexual health is? Like, because can you really enjoy something that you're supposed to be having pleasure in if you're worried about, oh my goodness, I hope I didn't get nothing. Oh my goodness, I'm not sure, what's going on with me. I haven't been to the doctor in forever, which that's something I love. Somebody mentioned, I think, Kiana, you talked about having a good relationship with your doctor. That's another show that we did talking about women and just our medical health. You have to, just like I spoke about with having a relationship and not wanting to be afraid to ask certain questions and have certain conversations, you need to have a doctor that you have that same kind of relationship with, because we talk about it as Black women. We have to advocate for ourselves when it comes to our health care, among 9 million other things, because a lot of times we're not taken seriously. And so you want to make sure that you have a doctor that you feel comfortable with, that you're going to tell exactly how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and someone who you feel is going to take those concerns that you have seriously. So it's like, I don't care who, may have been referred to you, or if you go into the doctor that everybody in the family has gone to. If you don't feel comfortable talking about certain things, or you don't feel like you're being heard, then you need to find another doctor. Yeah. And that was like my thing in 2024. I changed every person I dealt with, from my mental health care provider to my dentist, my orthodontist, my doctor, and just decided I got people who look like me, who have experienced what I've experienced. And the thing is, they're out there. They're out there. So from the people who take care of my teeth to the people who take care of my internal organs, are all people who look like me and, around my age, and who understand, and so that's just very important, because our health is all we have. Without our health, no matter how much we're doing as far as business, family, friendships, none of it is going to be able to be worthwhile if we don't have good health. So we have to make sure that those relationships are comfortable. So Miss Mia, and I don't think I can ever say your name without saying Miss Mia. I call you Miss Mia all the time. So let's see. As someone who is married, can you share with us how your toolkit may or may not look different from those who are not married? And then number 2, do you and your partner have conversations on what sexual health and sexual freedom looks like for you two?
I'm sure it looks different. because I have not seen a condom in a very long time. But I do. We still keep up with like appointments. He's very good at going to the doctor, getting checkups, things, which is helpful because I don't want to be the only person, looking out for both of us, if that makes sense. And my toolkit is more, it's more creative. I'll say it that way. Like we go to stores to look for different things, to kind of be creative, to spice it up, and we do it together.
Yeah.
It's actually evolving, I will say right now, in a great way, because he has been very encouraging for me to be more confident, and to be more empowered as a woman, which I appreciate because it wasn't that way at first. And so I am exploring, and being more open to like knowing myself, knowing my body, and knowing, because we change, as we grow up, and I have 2 kids, and so it's a lot of changes. And so we did have like one thing that really helped me kind of grow up was like I found out that I did change in some ways sexually, and it was some uncomfortable conversation around that. But I was just like, I mean, it is what it is. I like, I don't like that anymore. Yeah. Like I don't like that anymore. And so I like, even now, like I have to advocate for myself. But again, like because we've had those conversations, he's more willing to hear me and encourage me to do what I need to do for myself. But again, we stay on those doctor's appointments, get tested. We talk about things, so we have open communication.
Yeah,
because no one's perfect. If anything happens, I want to know. So I can take care of myself. And it's a partnership. That's my best friend, so it's just open communication.
Yeah, I love that, but I loved how you said, like, I don't like that anymore. Things change. And, as women, our bodies go through a lot for those of us who have had children. Stuff don't even be in the same place no more. You know what I mean? It's like, and like the true thing, this is a true story for me. On my 3rd son, and all of my kids were big, over 8 pounds. So I have big boys. And so on my 3rd son, I had a C-section, which was the 2nd C-section that I had, which they normally don't do that. So I had a C-section the first time. And usually if you have a C-section the first time, you're just C-section throughout. But I didn't. C-section the first time, vaginal the 2nd time, and then a C-section the 3rd time. And she found out that my bladder had not been put back properly. And so she asked me, she said, Stay, when you go to pee, she was like, do you get a single stream or does it just kind of spray? And I said, well, if I think about it, probably more spray, but that's usually too because I hold it. So I just thought because and she was like, no, the way your bladder was, it was kind of cutting in half to where you couldn't get a single stream, because I didn't realize, like, when you're going through those type of surgeries, they literally take your stuff out and sit it down. And she said, when we're putting it back in, we're kind of guessing. Because everybody's body is different. So they know around where it should be, but of course,
Around.
Right, yeah.
Around is wild.
Right?
Around
You go to medical school
Yes.
way too long.
And
to
so
put
when
around.
I say everything is not always in the same place, that's true. And something else that you said that really resonated with me is just that the confidence in having a partner who helps you with that, because I was married before and my ex-husband has never, well, of course now, but never saw me totally naked. Never. And I was married for years. I think I was married like 8-10 years before. So, and never saw me. And so the husband, my current husband, my life partner, my best friend, which makes all the difference in the world when it comes to this stuff, is like, girl, what are you talking about? We not doing that. What? And I'm like, well, I'm just not. But he has helped me so much. So that is so important in the conversations. And me feeling vulnerable enough to just say, instead of playing these little hide and seek games, like, look, dude, I'm just not comfortable because he like, look, Me neither. So I ain't over here with no six pack. But it does. It makes it so yeah. We just be around there, just old and fat, and it's good.
Right?
And everything's fine. But sometimes, you just have this high expectation that you kind of put on yourself.
Yeah.
And from the things that we see on social media and everything, because even at our big ages, we're not blind. We see what's out there, and we still, for whatever reason, feel like we have to match that. And so it just felt so good to finally be like, oh, so I could just take my Spanx off, and I could, please do.
What's Spanx?
So I love that. All right, Miss Erin, it's your turn. So in your experience, what does it look like to have these conversations that we've discussed with men? And is there any common reaction you receive?
So I'm single, never been married. I don't have kids. I've just been living the free, good life, right? The good life, And I will say the conversation looked a lot different today than it did, in my younger years. You didn't know yourself. 30s was like the prime. Like, I'm learning a lot more about myself and what it is that I want and what I want from a partner. Totally different than what I thought, as a teenager, what my husband was gonna look and be like, girl, you'd have been left him divorced. Right, girl, please. So now it's like, oh, okay. Now I really, really understand who I am, what I want, and what I need. So I am very careful about who I partner with. And again, if I can't have that conversation with you, well, it's cool. We could be friends. I'm friends with a lot of people. I'm a likable girl, so we could be cool. But that's it, But so I am very comfortable with having those conversations because when I do settle down, when I do decide to maybe have somebody's baby, I want it to be the last part, that's it. You got me for life. There is there's no leaving this. Yeah. So I got to just be an open door, an open book. He has to be the same and be still riding with me. The page may look different as you read your book, and it turns it's gonna look different every day. This is cute, and this is all together right now. But I could turn on you come tomorrow. But you still got to rock with me. I'll still rock with you too. So I am looking for that type of level of compatibility. But I'm never afraid to have the conversation because that kind of tells me if we move forward or if we leave it here. So I'm good with having that conversation. And I have 80% of my close friend group, we've known each other, we've grown up together. So we are used to we've had those conversations when we shouldn't have been having those conversations. I'm asking you, and I'm like, girl, you don't know, we shouldn't be asking each other this.
Right,
ask our mom, we didn't. But now it's interesting because as I heard, I have baby boomer parents, and I've had that uncomfortable conversation about sex when I was, in adolescence. They're teaching me and, doing their best to educate me, and it's super uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for them too. And we probably didn't talk about it for another long, lengthy period of time.
Right, all you need to know.
It's oh gosh. But now, even though I don't want to talk to them about it, but if it comes up, it's not bury me, Right. I take in what you say because I'm able to uncover what's uncomfortable about what it is that they're saying and really kind of dig down to what's important about it. And so I've had those uncomfortable conversations. I'm open to having those uncomfortable conversations with friends. I agree with you. The younger ones, I think I just try to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And if I could be vulnerable and if I can open up to kind of open the door for them to have those conversations with me, I welcome that because they may not be comfortable with having those conversations with their parents, but maybe look to you as, oh, this is someone I look up to and I admire. I want to ask her, but I don't know. Or so I'm like, I try to just be that open, safe haven for anyone to have that conversation. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And we just have to, figure out a way to be more comfortable with being the ones to bring it up when it comes to our younger generations.
Yes.
Just and let them know that it's okay.
That is
because
okay.
I know for so many of us, we kind of learn the whole where babies come from type thing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so don't do that.
Right.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's never going to happen, right? At
Yeah.
some point. And I feel like it's just like they talk about the preacher's kids or whatever. Like the ones who you tell don't do it, they're the ones who are going to do it, and then they're going to do it wrong.
Yep.
And then there's going to be the issues.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, we want to, guide our youth to not do things prematurely, and we don't want to, make it like, it's a free for all, but at the same time, don't make it this mysterious, taboo, bad thing, because most young people are just like, oh, well, what is that all about?
Yeah. Right.
And then, like somebody said, then they start talking about it with their friends, and
Yeah.
and then if something does happen, right, and they end up having a sexual experience, and it's not great, they're too ashamed to talk about it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the shame part of it all, because
Yes.
it's not like you
Yeah.
just go down this path and you just do bad things and you just get turned out. But it's you have one experience, whether it's all the way or not. It's like could be one foot in, but you are so shamed.
Yes.
You're like,
You don't
oh
wanna
my god,
say
going to
anything.
hell. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the elephant in the room, honestly, and no shade, but is faith-based. If you grew up in a faith-based family in the church, what happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom. You just really don't talk about it. So that's why I feel like, in our community, we don't really have those conversations because that stays there. So then you go off sneaking around and, doing stuff that you probably shouldn't be doing, and you don't feel comfortable going to your parent because even, if they're in the church, and, somebody comes up pregnant, like, it's kind of like a shame thing again, but then you're not educating your kids on these things because, again, you're closed off. You don't want to have these conversations. We don't talk about that, so then it just happens.
And it's inevitable. It's going to happen.
it
So,
is.
I don't want to introduce my child to birth control because I feel like that's giving them the ticket to
Yep,
have sex.
correct.
But
Yes.
guess what? They're going to have sex anyway.
Right.
I don't want to, talk about different types of relationships. I don't want to talk about, if like we get taught about certain things when it comes to certain people who shouldn't touch you here or say certain things to you. But what about that little boy or girl who is your same age that might touch you and you don't feel good about it, but then you feel like, well, I got myself in this situation, so can I say? And so that's how we end up, with things like date rape and things. So it's just like, we have to have the conversations because it's inevitable. I mean, sex has been around since the beginning of time. I don't see it stopping anytime soon. And so we just want to make sure that people are able to talk about it and let it be a healthy experience, because I know a lot of young people end up getting in very unhealthy relationships when they're young, girls or boys who are afraid to say no, don't know that they can say no, and they don't want to talk to anybody because it's like, well, I don't even want my mom to know that I'm even in that arena, so I just can't say anything. And so what are some, things that you think that we can do as adults who have had these experiences to open up the dialogue or even talk to other parents about how to make this not so taboo?
Starting them young,
Yeah.
even just identifying their body parts. Like my baby was 3 years old in the bathtub saying vagina, or she called it vagina. Just little stuff like that, her being able to identify her body so that if something did happen to her, she could be like, God forbid, but somebody touched my vagina, or somebody made me feel this way about my vagina, like just starting those conversations like really early, and how you were saying, like you talk to your son about it. I think that's very important, like open it up. It might be uncomfortable for them, they might be a little shy, but it's gonna be in the back of their mind, like when those conversations come up, when their friends talking, being young and dumb and talking about dumb stuff, they think in the back of their mind, well, my mama said, so I'm not listening to that. So I think that's very important.
Right.
And I to me, I always wanted boys, so I'm.
Me too, me.
I love having boys.
Yes, me too.
I'm a woman, but I never wanted a little girl.
Yeah, same.
And so I feel like it's an honor to be able to raise young black men because I, being a woman, can explain to them that, like, hey, you don't get to say, like, what happens. Like, you know, it has to be mutually agreed upon. Like, you don't just go in and be like, this is what I'm going to get, you know. And it's like, no, if she even acts like, you know, she's scared, doesn't want to, like, that's your moment to be like, are you okay? You know, and to really take care of the other person that you're doing this with. And I always tell my oldest that, like, you know, you have to communicate with that person. And you just don't get to decide what happens. You know, and if you have any question, like, you take pause too. Like, you stop.
Right. I agree. And I think it's funny, for me, I prayed for boys as well. And I felt like, you know, girls just seem too hard for me, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, right. And my sister, who is here today, I had one little sister, she ruined me for girls. Like, that was enough. I had my sister. So I'm like, no little girls. I had one girl. That's enough, right? But the thing is, I also believe that as parents of young men, we have a responsibility as the woman parent, because, like you said, to share that experience, because so many girls at that young age suffer from low self-esteem. They don't have that confidence, and it doesn't matter. It could be the most popular girl. There's still, those adolescent teenage years are rough for girls, and some boys as well. But I just felt like it was my duty to make sure that my sons knew how to care for a girl and not be that aggressive, and not be, because sometimes girls will do stuff just because, you know, and it's like, and then they regret it. And as much as we like to talk about, you know, equal in the men and women or whatever, but we're not the same. Men and women are very different, and guys can do certain stuff and just keep it moving, even at a young age, and it doesn't really affect them, especially when it comes to sex. It's a notch on their belt. It's easier for guys to talk. You know, there's not a 15-year-old boy who could go to the football locker room and say he had sex with a girl, and that's gonna be embarrassing for him. That's like, oh, what's up, and high five. But that 15-year-old girl can't go and talk to her cheerleader friends because now she's a hoe. So it's totally different. So I always wanted my boys to be respectful of that for girls, and don't you be the one to turn that girl into a hoe. Don't you be the one. Like, even if y'all are doing something, you don't go and tell anybody else what you're doing. And that was a responsibility I felt, because I knew for my sons, this whole sexual thing was going to be a lot easier for them than it was going to be for those girls. And so I think that that's a responsibility we have as the woman parent with sons, to share that kind of thing, because at one time we were that little girl, right?
Yeah.
So we want to open up for audience participation. So what I love about today, there was a lot of oohs and ahs and wows and whatever. So we have a lovely group of panelists here. So if anybody in the audience has any questions, statements, y'all are welcome to take part while I see what I might be missing, because I'm not seeing the comments online. Or if anybody on the panel has anything to add that we haven't already talked about.
I was thinking, with your last question, like how we start to approach the uncomfortable conversations with young people. Like, just as I was listening, like, what I kept hearing as a common theme is, like, I think too, also, it might be helpful if we start to, like, reframe our why for having the conversations and where they come from. Because I think whether it's you're a parent, you're a mentor, you're a big sister, you're a big brother, often, you know, when it comes to our young people, like, we want to protect them. We've got all these dreams for them. And I feel like what happens, even when we talk about our experiences up here, a lot of times with this conversation, I feel like what happens is all of the fear of what will happen and what will go wrong comes out in the conversation. So you get the don't and the don't and the don't. But what we also know is when we move in fear, that rarely works out as well for us as when we don't. And so thinking about, to the point of self-love, which I know is also a theme of today's conversation, how having those conversations can be for instilling that, especially into young Black kids who might, in different situations, feel like they have to walk around just going with the flow of things, understanding that sex doesn't have to be that. And with this information, they can really take this idea of my body, my choice, and be empowered to make decisions so that it happens on their terms. Out of loving themselves, they have the information to do what they need to do to protect themselves because they love themselves. But maybe if meeting the conversation in that way might have a different outcome so that we can reduce some of this stigma and
Yeah.
taboo that we have.
That's good. I love that.
I love that
Yeah.
word empowerment.
Yeah.
Because when I feel
Yeah.
empowered, it's like my body, my choice. Like
Yes.
I'm in control of this. Like nobody can change the way I feel about my body, and I'm controlling that. And I think how you were saying like self-love, self-care. We in this big era of that.
Right.
I think that should go hand in hand with sexual health. You know, self-care. That's a part of it because that's a part of your mental health. You're giving your body away to everybody, you're gonna start to feel a little crazy. So you know, I think that it should definitely be synonymous. Together.
Why you
Like,
do
talk
it, how
about
you do it, all of that is a part of knowing your value and how you teach other people about it. And I
Yeah.
think if we can take that approach, that teaches our kids that even in terms of how they navigate their sex and their sensuality from a young age.
Yeah, we have to, you know, like I said, empowerment and letting, like, that's boss. Like, just I do whatever I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it, on my terms. Like, that is, and it's just so crazy how a lot of times that's the very thing that people are afraid to do when that is just so boss. If I want to say yeah, I say yeah. If I want to say no, I say no. And it feels so good. It feels so
Because
good.
no is a boss word.
Oh,
Let me
yeah.
tell you. When you're like, no,
No
I
is
just,
a boss
I just don't feel
word.
like it.
Yes, I feel good about
It's
that.
a complete
I feel good.
sense.
A complete
Yes,
sense.
I teach that all the time. It's like, you know, when you can have kind of arrived with your self-love and the knowing of yourself,
Yeah.
when you are, first of all, not afraid to say no, and then you feel very comfortable with saying no with no explanation.
At all.
Because so many times, especially as women, we feel like,
At
okay,
all.
I'm not going to do this, but why? What am I going to tell them why I'm not doing it? You don't have to say why. I'm just
Yeah.
not doing it with no, and that's when you kind of finally arrive. Because as women, a lot of times, you know, we're people pleasers.
Right.
And that can happen when it comes to our sex lives as well. We're in this relationship or whatever, and, you know, we may be into the relationship, but we might not be ready to go to that next step. But because our partner is ready for the next step, it's just like, okay, well, I can't say no. Yeah, you absolutely 100% can. You can say no. And we have to teach that more. I mean, yeah, and that's taking care of us. Like I said, if this is something that's supposed to be pleasure in your life, then it should not be bringing you stress, because those things really can't exist together at the same time. So I love that. I love that. I don't know why the audience all of a sudden got shy. When yes, we got a comment.
I do believe that there's also a stigma and a taboo about talking about sex in general, you know, which I think that a lot of people have to start getting over so that we can have these open conversations comfortably with, especially with your other partner. I mean, if you can't have that conversation with your partner, that's what intimacy is all about.
Right.
Yeah.
If you can't be intimate, open, and honest with that other partner, then, you know, like she said, why go there?
Yeah.
You know, I totally agree with that. I just wanted to add that.
And that's interesting that you bring up intimacy, because I think right now we're in a space, the people that are, not everyone, but the people that are open are more free thinking and flowing, and intimacy is not something that's being talked about when it comes to sex.
Right.
And so that's something that we have to think about as well. Is
Because
like,
building that intimacy should happen before.
Right.
we're engaging
Yes,
in
yes,
sex.
yes.
Sex isn't the
The build-up.
intimate
It's
part.
not.
Right?
Real foreplay.
Correct.
That's the real
Exactly.
foreplay.
Right. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my point. If you can't
Yeah.
be intimate, then, you know,
Right.
why
Yeah.
even start.
Yeah, play with my
exactly.
mind first.
That's right.
Play with
Yeah.
my mind before you
Yeah.
play with anything else. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
that wholeheartedly. Because sometimes people act like it's the same thing, and it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, it's
not.
not.
The same thing. You can have a very intimate relationship without sex.
Right.
You know, that's like the cherry on top, right? But so many people like, well, you know, we're not intimate, like, but they're talking about sex. Like, no, we're not intimate. That's why we're not having sex.
Yes.
So let's really be
Yeah.
intimate. So yeah, those are the conversations. Anybody else have anything?
That's good.
I think it's important to be intimate in front of your children. I think that's how they learn and they understand and how they learn to respect. I am a seasoned woman, so I was not brought up in the world where my mother and father were intimate in front of me. Everything was done behind closed doors, and I mean literally you could hear through the walls.
So like y'all doing something.
Right. You better not speak. I would have died.
Right.
You know, you better not be like, I heard you, Mom. What was the noise? So, but, you know, where I learned my sexuality from was like, Dear God, to me, Margaret, I didn't even know it was a religious book because I thought I was learning about increasing my breast, getting a period, and, you know, going finding little boys. So I didn't even understand, but that's where I really, truly learned. And then because no one taught me at home, I now got to go experiment with somebody. So what do I do? Because I'm in a house packed with people. So now I'm looking for someone to be intimate with me in a way that I don't understand because I've never been taught what intimacy is. Right. So now me and the little boys behind closed door.
You like, I got this book.
Very important. And we teach our children at a very young age what intimacy looks like, what love looks like, what friendship looks like.
Yes.
And once they understand all of that, sexuality will come natural, it'll come pure, and it'll come with, as my great friend says, the word no and being a complete sentence.
A complete sentence. And that is important. I like that. And I believe that as far as the totality of the parental relationship, it's also important that, you know, kids see what healthy conflict even looks like. You know, growing up in a household where, you know, parents try to, we don't want the kids to know we're arguing, we don't whatever. I mean, and there's been a couple of times, you know, where my youngest son, because he's the only one of the kids that has literally been with me and my husband since, you know, he was little. The other kids were a little older when we got married, but he's been the one who has been in the household with us doing most of his upbringing. And there's been times where, first of all, kids feel the tension or whatever. And so he say something, I'll be like, Wallace done took me off. We'll be fine, you know, because they need to see that. But we also hold hands in front of them. We embrace, you know, so it's none of that, like, it's so weird. And I think that's the thing. We try to shield our kids from things that they are going to encounter at a certain point. What we need to show them is how to do these things healthily. So whatever it is, you know, it comes, you know, to even having a drink or whatever. Like, you tell your kids not to drink, but the same thing. If you don't want them not to see, if you do drink, how you can do it in moderation, do it healthily, so they're not going somewhere and down in a bottle of Mad Dog 2020. And so, you know,
Mad Dog.
Banana Red.
No, you know what? That's funny, but that came back on TikTok.
It's TikTok.
They brought
Yes, they brought that back. They brought that other line back.
TikTok about to wrap it up.
Yes, TikTok. Right. I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do. I was telling them, I saw a post on Facebook that said TikTok is going away, so what we going to cook? We don't even have no recipes. But it is about, you know, teaching our kids about how to, you know, this is just normal life stuff, but this is a healthy way of doing it.
We do everything in front of our kids and get on their nerves. We get on their nerves. And I'm like, you know, you see it, and it just normalizes, like, you know, just things that you don't see outside. Like, I grew up that way. I didn't see anything. You know?
Yeah.
I can say this because my mother is gone. She passed away, but I didn't see anything. But then one day I walked in and I'm like, oh Lord, you know? And that's like, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, you know what I mean? I'm sorry.
Right.
But y'all didn't talk to me about this.
Right.
You know? You talked to me, I could have just probably disclosed it on my
like, hey,
we had a conversation.
Right. They just being healthy.
But like, our kids know, like, you know.
It's healthy.
We talk to them about it.
It is.
It's a part of life.
They see us argue, they see us kiss, and they hate it.
Like, but
It's
that's
good
okay.
for 'em.
They know.
And it's healthy. For me, I had, like I said, I had this fairy tale of what my life was going to be, what I was married, what all of that was going to look like. And I joke, but I'm like, no, I'm serious. Had I been that age, because that's what I saw up until that point. It wasn't until I moved to Texas and I lived with my parents for 3 years. And at that point, I was like, I was in my mid-20s. And so all of a sudden, they were just like, we got a grown-up living at home. And they just started talking real regular. I was like, wait a minute, a child is in the room. But then I got to really open out my eyes like, oh, this is work, you know?
Right.
Like I could remember my mom saying it when I was a teenager, like, you know, marriage is work and da-da-da, but I'm like, y'all make it look so easy, y'all are cute and all this stuff. Y'all get along, y'all like each other, but then I'm like, oh, wait, y'all have some days where y'all just like bumping heads or you just snapping at each other. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm sipping my tea. Like, this is crazy. Wow. And now it's just, they have been together for so long and they love the mess out of each other, but then they can get on each other's nerves. Like, I don't know what. Healthy. And I'm just like, I love it though. I look to have someone that, like that I will work with. Right. Because that was also I don't think I want to work on this with you because I might be smothering you and you're asleep. I don't think we can work together. But just like, you know, just really not taking lightly that it's not about just being partnered with someone or, you know, it's not just about this physical thing. And they explain that too in the introduction to sex as that's not all about that. That's not always going to be the thing. It's all these other things that build up to make you want to say, hey, I want to invest my time and my body and my energy with this person and to look at all of that. So I embrace, you know, I feel like I will be that kind of parent. I'll be that very open book. This is what it is, you know. My brother and his wife, I think they are starting that. My mom doesn't always understand. And I'm like, well, it's a different generation. And I understand what the end result of that is going to be. It's knocking down some of the things that we had to get to a point to be comfortable with y'all with, which I think they're making it easy from the beginning for their kids to come back and say, I'll come to you with this issue, or I'll come to you with this problem, this question, this scenario that happened at school. So it's just, so kudos.
Well, ladies, as always, we could go on and on.
Yes.
But we have time restraints, so we're wrapping up for today. But I want everybody who's tuning in to know that we do this all the time. So we are here every other month. So to be up on all things Hey Sis, make sure you follow the AOC page. And don't miss an episode because we take deep dives into some real critical conversations that need to be had. I thank each and every one of you for coming today. It has been such a pleasure chatting with y'all. I learned a lot. I love having these types of conversations. And I would be remiss if I didn't say how much we miss our Kelly Allen Gray today. Yes. So I definitely miss Kelly. We love you, Kelly. Yes. And so this also from a conversation Kelly and I had on the patio. And we were just like, we need to talk, you know. So it was good. And so there, Hey Sis was birthed and it began a movement. I truly believe it. So thank you and all of you who are here in the studio audience live. We literally have people from all over. We got Indiana in the house, New York in the house, Virginia in the house. So it has been amazing. And so that's it. But we will be back with another Hey Sis and another great topic. And so we will see y'all next time. Don't forget to like the page, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And with that being said, Hey Sis.
Hey Sis.